What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode here on my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the documentary that was just released by Espn called The Last Dance, which was featuring Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the 97-98 season, which ended up being the Chicago Bulls last season as the team that we know, basically the 72-10 Bulls, and the second three-peat Chicago Bulls that left us all in awe in the 90s. So let's get to it. The first thing I want to talk about is just something light. I want to talk about how James Worthy was basically talking about Michael Jordan. They were trying to get the point across of how driven Michael Jordan was and how he was talking to the coach. The coach told him that he needed to work extremely hard, and Jordan basically said that he was going to work harder than anyone he's coached. So James Worthy starts to tell us a story about how he was better than Michael Jordan, but only for about 2 weeks.
About 2.5 hours of hard practice, I'm walking off the floor like drenched, sweat, tired. And here comes Michael, like pushing me back on the floor, wanting to play a little one-on-one, wanting to see where his game was. I was better than he was for about 2 weeks. He wanted to learn, he wanted to grow quickly.
That just had me dying. I was just rolling when I heard that. He's basically telling the story of how Jordan would challenge him after practice so that they could play one-on-one, and that for about 2 weeks he was better than Jordan. But after that point, Jordan basically figured him out and started beating him, and by the end of the season, he feels like Jordan was the best player, not only on the team, but one of the best players in national college basketball. Now, there aren't that many things I actually want to talk about episode 1. I think episode 2 was the more interesting one, where we got a lot more information on things that maybe I didn't know in the past. But the second thing I want to discuss about episode 1 is basically this notion that only centers could lead teams to championships in the 80s. Now, it wasn't just in the 80s, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. The main building block on a championship team was usually a center. This is why you saw Hakeem get drafted first, and that's why you saw Sam Bowie getting drafted second. Even though that was a little different because the Trailblazers already had Drexler and they basically didn't want to draft another guard. So there's this section in the episode where you see a bunch of people talking about how centers are basically the building blocks for a championship, and a couple of people there basically doubt what Michael Jordan was going to be able to do with his team, being that he was a guard, and at that time, guards didn't really lead teams to championships.
When Jordan first came to the Bulls, he was a number 3 pick. So a lot of people thought, well, he's only 6'6". So how much can he really do?
We wish he were 7'1", but he isn't.
Michael got to realize that he's not 7 foot, so he's not going to carry a team in the NBA.
I really don't think that in the NBA anymore, there's really not any such thing as a one-man team. And I don't think that you can come in expecting one guy to turn the whole thing around.
Isaiah Thomas was the only guard in the 80s that basically led a team to a championship. And then after Isaiah Thomas, we saw Michael Jordan do it. This is something that today's generation needs to understand, that before guards took over the league, especially now, which we see the Steph Currys, James Hardens, Kyrie Irvings, and all these players leading the league in not only assists, but also points nowadays, it's a different league. A lot of rules were changed to allow guards to be able to move freely the way they move. Hand-checking rules were removed, and this actually all happened after Michael Jordan retired, and the league was struggling to replace him. The ratings went down, scores went down. The 90s was very physical. It was more about defense. So the league had to put some rules in place to actually allow players to move around freely, which is how we got to today. Now, on to episode 2. This is where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time here in this video discussing. The first thing I want to discuss is how underpaid Scottie Pippen was throughout his time with the Chicago Bulls. The last year that they were together, Michael Jordan made over $30 million and Scottie Pippen made something like $2.8 million. So essentially, Jordan was making 10 times what Pippen was making. Now, that's part due to the fact that Pippen wanted to secure a long contract. He signed a 7-year deal worth, I think it was $17 million or $15 million. So Pippen signs a $17 million years for 7 years. And the reality is that he just wanted to take care of his family. But that was a terrible contract to sign. Now, his agent should be ashamed for allowing him to do that. And at the same time, Pippen should have believed in himself a little more to be able to know that he was going to be able to, after, say, another 2 or 3 years, still have the skill set to ask for a max contract at another team or with the Bulls. The problem with this was that it was right as the league basically exploded. In 1992, you had guys like Shaq come in and basically start making $90, $100 million contracts, and a bunch of other players started to take advantage of that. Pippen just happened to sign this contract a little too early before that explosion happened and he missed out. And the length of the contract was really the problem. The amount of money he was getting paid was not that big a deal, except that he decided to do that for 7 years. Had Pippen signed a 3 or 4 year contract, he would have been all right. And I understand that the owner basically told Scottie Pippen, do not sign this contract. And he told him that he would have no negotiation to rewrite the contract later on. I understand that you said that, but I just think it's wild disrespectful for someone who has done so much for your organization for you to not really consider doing that. That basically rubbed Scottie Pippen the wrong way, which led to him having drama and beef with the general manager and Jerry, which led to the point where Scottie Pippen was basically verbally assaulting the guy. That then led to something later on, Scottie Pippen's injury, right? Scottie Pippen basically told us that he sat out longer than he should have, and he did that on purpose because he wanted to take care of himself. And yeah, it was a little bit selfish, but can you blame the guy? I feel like the Bulls took advantage of that contract and just rode Pippen and signed other players that otherwise, if Scottie Pippen would have had a big deal, they would not have been able to sign some of those players. So why in the hell would they restructure? From their point of view, I just think it's wrong for you to do that to basically the second greatest player that played for your organization and helped you get 5 or 6 championship rings at the time. That's just flat out crazy. Now, there's one thing I want to say with regards to this. The owner, Jerry, who's also another Jerry, does not get a pass on this neither. And he does not get a pass with regards to the Bulls losing Michael Jordan neither. If you know you have such a rare talent, you should not let the general manager do all the crazy things that he basically did that broke up that team. Nowadays, the general manager would have got fired. I mean, general managers get fired nowadays for breathing too hard. But anyways, back to the topic. That also leads to a quote that I want to basically discuss. The Bulls started 4-4 that season that Scottie Pippen missed the beginning of. And there was a quote that Michael Jordan basically said that he had to, at that point, be the loudest voice in the locker room, which is very interesting. If you kind of read between the lines, he's basically saying that it was Pippen doing most of the talking on court. And if you think about it, leading the team. Michael Jordan was the outright alpha male on the team. He was the leading scorer. He was a savage. He was a killer. He was clutch. He carried the team. But all the little things that made the team function, it seemed like it was Scottie Pippen who was in charge of that for the most part. The vocal talking on the court, etc. See, Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen must have had 2 different approaches to how they led. Jordan would just basically push guys and be mean to them to the point where it didn't matter what anyone else on the court in terms of opponents say or did to them, they were going to be tough because Jordan himself already broke these guys and made sure that they was tough. Where Scottie Pippen was probably more of the talk to you and let you know, hey, you could do better or that sort of thing, which is, you know, kind of like a Steve Nash type of player, which is great leadership also. Phil Jackson also, I think, outright said that Scottie Pippen was the leader of the team. And please don't confuse this with me trying to take credit away from Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was a savage. He's the greatest player of all time. But it seems like there were a lot of things that Pippen just kind of took away from him not having to deal with so that he could focus on being the killer that he was.
We're not playing with much continuity and much rhythm, and that's something that Scottie really provides for us.
Scottie was so key for our team. He tied us together in many ways.
Now I want to get to the last topic, which was something that was kind of just recurring throughout the second episode and even going back to the first episode. I want to quote Jerry when he basically said that organization win championships.
Quote that was attributed to you.
Well, as you know, David, there was a misquote. What I said was that players and coaches alone don't win championships, that organizations do. I do sincerely believe that organizations as a whole win. One part of it can't win alone. The guy left the word alone out of there.
Not just players and not just coaches. It takes everyone being together to win a championship. And the guy is getting a lot of flack for this. A lot of discussions are going on behind this. And I mean, the guy's dead. So first of all, rest in peace to the guy. But his name is being kind of dragged in the mud and the guy can't even make an argument for why he did the things he did. So I want to get to that. I fully understand and believe in what Jerry was talking about. Let me give you an example. I believe that Greg Popovich is the main reason why the Spurs were such a dynasty and why the Spurs won 50 plus games for like 17 or 18 straight seasons. So let me explain why quickly and then I'll get on to the point with the Bulls. Of course you need the talent. Tim Duncan was the talent that Popovich was going to need to build a dynasty. You cannot have a dynasty without having that once in a lifetime sort of player. Maybe not once in a lifetime, but once every 10 to 15 year type of talent. You just can't. There's no way you can have a dynasty without it. But the one thing that is common in dynasties, for example, the Celtics and the Lakers, is the management, right? Think about this. How many great players haven't come and gone from the Celtics and the Lakers, and yet 20, 30 years later, the Celtics find a way to win again and win big and have a mini dynasty here and there. So with the reference to Pop, for example, think about this. Tim Duncan and the Spurs won a lot every single season. And so how do you actually draft when your team is going deep into the playoffs or they're winning championships? The truth is that you don't get to pick lottery picks. So in the case of Popovich, what does Popovich do? He recruits players like Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, and then later on even Kawhi Leonard, the Patty Mills of the world. This is where you have to understand where Jerry was coming from. Popovich is the reason that Duncan didn't have to leave the Spurs or open his mouth or do anything, because Popovich did everything he was supposed to do to make sure that Tim had a championship caliber team around him. Now, with relation to Jerry and Michael Jordan, I feel the same way. I respect GMs and I respect management, because I always felt that in order to win a championship, the organization needs to be clicking. You have to have most things in order. That is everything from your elite or franchise player to having like a Robin on your team, having a third guy potentially that's really good, and then a very strong supporting cast. Coaching is also critical, and the general manager and the owner are also critical. The owner signs the checks, the general manager makes the decisions about the roster, and the coaches kind of strings along all those players to make sure that there's harmony on the team and that the chemistry works and that they follow the game plan so that you can win a championship. So if all those pieces are not working together, then you don't have championships. There have been maybe 1 or 2 or 3 teams in the world over the history of the NBA that have won a championship without having all these things in order. But for the most part, every team that's won a championship has had a great general manager and great coaching, as well as a star and a supporting role that you can rely on. So it kind of bothers me a little bit to see Jerry getting dragged through the mud. Yeah, he was stupid. Let me say this. He was stupid for basically hating Phil Jackson so much and Scottie Pippen that he decided it was okay to lose Michael Jordan. Don't! Oh, man. That's like one of the dumbest things ever. But it got to a point that it was so bad that his ego just took control and didn't let him think properly. But I want people to separate these two things. I want you to separate Jerry, the GM, who built the team for Jordan, who won 5 and 6 championships, from Jerry, the egomaniac, who was tired of not getting credit for what he felt he deserved. If you want to bash the guy for letting Michael Jordan go because he hated Pippen and Phil Jackson so much, I agree with you 100%. But you're going to have to give that man credit. All the things he did. For one, he drafted Scottie Pippen. And, you know, there was this section in the video where Michael Jordan was angry because basically the team was tanking in the 80s. And Michael Jordan just wanted to win every game. To me, that is small thinking. I understand as a player, that's basically what you should focus on. You should want to win every game. But without the moves that Jerry made to get Scottie Pippen, does Jordan have 6 rings? Jordan was great enough to me that he was going to win 1 or 2 rings regardless of what garbage team you gave him. When Jordan reached his prime, he was going to win a ring. But without Jordan and Pippen being the nucleus for that championship run, and then he added Horace Grant the very next year after Scottie Pippen. And then he traded for Bill Cartwright when they needed a center, even though Charles Oakley was a close friend of Jordan. You have to give that man credit. Then if you think about the second three-peat team, he was the one who traded for Dennis Rodman when Dennis Rodman was being looked at as some crazy dude in the NBA. He was smart enough to know that if he put him on the court with Jordan, Jordan was going to handle things. So there has to be this synergy between the coach, the general manager, the player, and everybody in an organization for them to win. And that's just what I want to get at. I'm really not happy with all of this bashing of the general manager. I respect basketball as a full. There are too many Jordan fans that cannot stand anything negative that's being said about Jordan. And in fact, nothing negative is really being said about Jordan. I'm not saying anything about Jordan that's negative. All I'm saying is you got to give that man respect, because it takes an organization to build a team to win a championship. Of course, Michael Jordan was the biggest piece of that, and Michael Jordan would have probably won elsewhere, even with a decent general manager. But at any given moment, any team he was on, The general manager was going to have to pull some moves to get that man to win. And in this case, the moves that Jerry Krause made led Jordans to win 6 championships. Yeah, there were some mistakes made along the way and some things were said that should have not been said on both sides. But at the end of the day, I just hate the way the situation went down. The man is dead. Rest in peace. Let that man rest and stop dragging his name through the mud. And before I go, I just want to confirm and let you guys know that I do think Michael Jordan is the GOAT. So don't come at me if you don't agree with some of the things I said in the video. I think Michael Jordan is the GOAT. I just don't think that the man walks on water and he's not a god. That's just my personal thing. It's not like I'm a very religious person, but I refuse to call another human being a god. And the idea that LeBron's fans are going to be upset and they're going to be making excuses, no, man. Michael Jordan is the greatest player that ever played the game. There's no excuses over here. I'm just trying to put some context into things. And no, I'm not bitter about that. I am happy to say that Michael Jeffrey Jordan, like Skip says, is the GOAT. So go kick rocks. Just because I don't agree with everything and I don't believe Jordan walks on water doesn't mean that I'm hating on the man. If you like what you saw, please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, and I want to know, do you agree with what I'm basically saying or you disagree? I know there's a lot of Jordan fans out there and there's also a lot of LeBron James fans, and we spent too much time arguing left and right. Michael Jordan is the GOAT, and like I said, I'm a LeBron fan. I'm completely fine with that. It is my opinion, based on all the research I've done and all the reporters and all the rankings from major networks, that LeBron James is going to end up being the second greatest basketball player ever. And there's nothing you guys out there who hate him can do. I am happy with LeBron James being the second greatest player to ever play basketball. Other LeBron fans might not agree, but I love basketball more than I love LeBron. And with that being said, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.